Hello everyone, this is Mel here. Welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to take a look at Marching Order, a solo or co-op dungeon delve. So this is the Mud and Blood edition, and I'm aware that there's currently a new edition called the Coin and Cursed edition, which is on Kickstarter campaign at the moment. And I think it's just a really good time to look back into what is the marching order in general, and kind of explain why I'm excited to see the new edition that is coming out. So for those of you who are not aware, Marching Order is a tabletop solo or co-op dungeon crawl games. Think of it as very similar to the likes of 4 Against Darkness and D100 Dungeon, where you will take 4 characters, where you will basically take these characters and go into a dungeon. You will have to draw the dungeon itself, and then during that process, you will have encounters with enemies as well as loot and so forth. And then after that, as long as you survive, you will be able to get back out and do it again. Now, this is also highly inspired by the Darkest Dungeon video game that was released, I think, back in 2016 or 17. And, over the years, we've seen a few games actually inspired by the Darkest Dungeon video games, including, obviously, the official one, that is the Darkest Dungeon, the board game, from the Mythic Games. Unfortunately, that was a complete disaster as far as we know in terms of the Kickstarter fulfillment. And we have also seen other smaller games, that is, more indie developers inspired by the Darkest Dungeon games, such as the Dungeons of Drachma, which is highly inspired by the art but not necessarily the gameplay. In my opinion, Marching Order has the best Darkest Dungeon gameplay that is adapted from the video game out of the board game or most of the other adaptations that I've seen. So let's step back a little back. So this version, this physical copy was sent to me by James Crane, the creator, and also I think at Crumbling Keeps. Although I've actually bought the PDF a few years ago, when none of these were available. I think back in the days it was just a PDF. These physical components were not ironed out. We had to do print and play. So I didn't actually do any print and play back then. So I was actually quite excited that James sent me this copy. And one of the reasons you can tell straight away is because how ink heavy this print and play would be if I have to do it myself. And I just don't like printing, very dark, materials. We know that if you print on A4 papers, normal papers, it would just be a complete mess. So it's good that it's professionally printed. And also on top of that, because this game comes with cards, and as much as I love to print and play and cut my own cards, it's always a little bit different compared to a professionally printed version. Now that said, the components of the first edition is not the most deluxe, I would say. You can see, for example, the cards is a little bit thin, but that's fine. That just adds to the charm of these kind of indie games that has been created by small publishers. So let's take a look at what Marching Order is. So first thing first, you would notice, and I'm sure most people will notice straight away, is how beautiful the cover art is. So these arts are drawn by an artist called Mustafa Becker. And I think he covered majority of the covers as well as the characters in this game. Now this game also includes other arts, so not all arts are by Mustafa, but the main arts, which is the covers as well as the characters, are all designed by Mustafa. And if we look at the one of the diverse scenes, this is obviously the Dungeon Degenerate scene, issue number 3, where Mustafa was being interviewed by Sean. You can see his inspiration. So what are the 5 of your most inspirational works? And you can see straight away that Mustafa said that he's inspired by Karl Krzysztof's Hell's Reach on Logan, as well as Peter Knifton's illustration in the Blood Bowl 2nd edition rulebooks, Gary Ward's illustration for Caverns of the Snow Witch, Simon Bisley's Slain and Horned Gods, and Paul Bonner's illustration in the Rogue Trader Oak source books. And you can see these arts are just amazing. And I'm actually, and this one as well, you can see this is exactly the same cover as the one which is in the Marching Order book, one of the books. And also not to confuse you, because actually there comes with 2 books, because one is for the rules and the other one is kind of like the choose your adventure book, where you actually have the dungeon and the encounters included. And you can see straight away, funny enough, this is actually a reverse of the dungeon encounter, where this takes the point of view from the adventurers, and then this one is from the point of views from the goblins. So I think this is really clever way of showing both sides. Now, I also have a little bit of additional booklet. This is the Sewers of Rock Bottom, I think the Neck Deep. So this is actually the Savage and Scum edition. I think this is probably part of the new Kickstarter edition. This is kind of a additional random generation mode, random dungeon generations, because in the original Mud and Blood edition, this is more of a choose your adventure style. So you basically need to go to a passage, and it will tell you an encounter, and then during the gameplay you will start to map out a dungeon, the dungeon layout. So the dungeon was already created. The story, although those encounters was originally created for you, you're just kind of exploring it like a D&D modules. But in the new Neck Deep Sewer Rock Bottom, this book is kind of generated the random dungeon for you, so more into the likes of Four Against Darkness and also the D100 genres, where every dungeon will be different, because you're just literally rolling on a D66 and then see what kind of room you get, and you will also roll on kind of different encounters or different enemies every time. But let's step a bit back. So what and how do you actually play marching orders? And it's quite interesting, because I think a lot of the reviewers kind of say, this is where you go through the dungeon, where you go through the encounters. And obviously the main thing that you do is to look at your marching order, because in this game, you will need to take care of how you order your kind of adventure line. So for example, if you put 4 adventurers here, it will be forming a marching order, where on the right hand side is the closest to the enemies, the left hand side is the furthest to the enemies, and then you will then need to put down your enemies on the other side. Because of the space limitation, I'm just going to put it as a second row. So for example, if we look at a typical encounter that looks like this, then the Giant Red and the Alchemist, they will be next to each other. So they're one space next to each other. So if you have an attack or an action that you can attack one space next to you, then you can use that. But then you can't attack probably something that is further down the line. And that is where the adaptation of the Darkest Dungeon video game mechanics comes into place. Now, what a lot of the the reviewers didn't tell you is how difficult it is to actually put this on your table. And the reason is because of the character sheet. So in this game, you actually need 4 individuals every time. And you would notice, if you have watched other videos, that these are not the official character sheets. These are ones that I actually created myself, because in the official game, you actually need to print out an A4 character sheet per character. So if you think about it, this is slightly less than A5. So I've already put 2 characters here, but I have to put, 4, and you literally have to put 4, because the way the game works is that you need to put dice on your character sheet to track how many turns before your action is on cooldown. So it is very difficult, and that's why you can see over the time I've actually developed my own character sheet, the ones that you can see over here, and I've also developed other stuff to help improve the experience, or let me play it on a smaller table. And the interesting part is, I don't think, if you are interested in this game, and I think this is a really good game, you actually don't have to do this, because in the latest editions, I think Crumbling Keeps have actually developed ways of minimizing all the needs of the character sheets, the original first edition ones, and make it into more of a board game experience. So you don't have to put up with something like what I am showing as my own kind of, hack to this game. And you can just buy the whole package and enjoy it as a streamlined board game experience. So let's quickly go through one encounter example to tell you exactly what we are looking at. So in front of us is one of the typical encounters in this game. So we have the 4 rogues, the name for characters or adventurers in this game. So in this case, we have the knight, we have the doctor, and then we have the wizard, and then we have the musketeers. Each of these characters will have different stats. They will have, the physical, defense, magical, tinkering, awareness, escape, luck, and resolve. And then, these will basically add to your dice roll. This game uses just D6. So you basically, if it asks you for a physical test, you will roll a D6 plus the bonus, and then, compare to whatever is the difficulties to see if you can do something. And on the other side, you have your enemies. So in this encounter, we have 2 giant rats over here, and then we have 2 venom spiders at the end. And enemies will also have some stats. They have like magic, resolve, physical, health, and also defense as well. So in this game, you actually kind of determine, first of all, who is going to act. So you roll dice each for both the rogue and also the enemy to see who is higher. So in this case, I have got a 2. So the enemy will start first. So all of them will take turn from the closest to your characters, then to the furthest, and then they will take turn each, and then, see what they do. And then after that, it will be your rogue's turn. So in this case, if we look at what the giant rat will do, you will need to look into the book where there is actually a action table for each of the enemies, and then it will need you to roll a dice to see kind of what kind of encounters, or sorry, what kind of actions will that enemy take. So to give an example, the giant rat, we have a table here. There is a 1 to 3, it will be a 2v boys, and then a 4 to 6 will be a skitter scatter. Now, on top of that, you actually, after you roll the actions dice, you also need to roll the bullshit dice. So the bullshit dice is kind of like the traits or the flaws of each of these characters. So if you roll 1, generally, it will be a really bad thing happening to that character. If it is a 6 thing, it will be a boon or a buff to that character. So in this case, let's quickly look at what the first giant rat will do. So we roll 1d6, and we got a 6. That will look good. So skitter scatter. So the giant rat switches position with a random ally. So it just basically moves around. So in this case, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it moves from here with the spider. So the Venom spider move to the front. So in this case, the next action will be that Venom spider. And we're going to have a look at see what it will do. So Venom's... Oh, actually, I forgot to roll for the bullshit for that giant rat. So let's roll that as well. So it's 1. Funny enough, because... what? It was that easy. The giant rat dies. So for some reason, it swap rolls with the Venom spider and it dies. Probably this is already kind of like a dying rat, and it just turns out to be, you know, on its last breath before it encounters our rogues. So that concludes the that giant rat, and then it will be the Venom spider. So let's look at what actions it will take. So a 6. A putrid bite. Target an adjacent rogue. Make a physical attack roll against the creature's defense. If successful, the rogue suffers damage as normal and gains the conditioned poisoned 1 infinity. And if no rogue is adjacent, it moves up 1 space in the marching order. So this is where the difficult part is coming from. And that is where the conditions are being applied to your characters. Because in this game, you actually do need to write down a lot of stuff. So in this case, first of all, let's see if it actually makes a successful physical attack roll. So it has a physical attack of +1 for the spider. And then for my first character on adjacent, which is a defense 5. So I would expect it to not actually succeed, but let's try. So the first one will be rolling against the 1 +1. So it gets a 2. So against the defense, it is not successful in terms of biting my knight. But let's say if it does, right? So if it does, then actually my knight will need to gain the poisoned 1 condition. Now in the base game, you will actually need to write it down. So we need to write down poisoned, then 1, and then infinity. And every turn, you would then need to look at what a poisoned means. What is poisoned? So if I just quickly check. So if we look at what is poisoned, this creature suffers 1 point of damage and can be removed by using an antidote and anti-venom. So in this case, you will basically, when it comes to the knight's turn, then he will basically take 1 health damage until he gains the he finds an anti-venom, and you know these conditions will continue after the encounter. So if I don't find the anti-venom very soon, then my knight will die. Now, I have actually developed my own way of applying the condition. As you can see, I've actually got these kind of like laminated sheet, each of these with 1 condition. So I can actually pull it out and then apply it to my character over here. And then I can also then I use a dice to indicate it is the 1, or I can just write, 1 and infinity to present this. In the base games, you will have to write it using probably pen and paper, and or you laminate and use the same way as a marker, erasable marker, and do it that way. So that concludes the spider's turn, assuming that is the ones that he success in, and then we roll on the bullshit dice. So in this case, let's see if we get a 6. Again, a 6. So they are more afraid of me than I am of them. So the Venom spider advances 1 space in the marching order if possible, and immediately take the arachnophobia action. And then that action is target a random rogue in the first 3 position in the marching order. The rogue must make a resolve roll versus TN3. If the rogue fails, they switch position with the rogue behind them. If there is no rogue behind them, there is no effect. So basically, it will just kind of screw up our order. So in this case, let's say it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it targets the doctor, and the doctor needs to make a resolve roll versus 3. So the resolve, actually, the doctor has a +4, and the toughness is actually 3. So let's roll for the doctor. So it's 2 + 4. Toughness is 6 + 3. So in this case, the doctor will actually need to move position with the next one. So it would basically just move with the doctor in this case. So that concludes the Venom Spider, and then it will go on. So after that, Venom's actions, let's just quickly, skip through to my characters ones, because after all the enemies is taking all these actions, it will be the rogue's turn. So in this case, again, it will be the ones who's closest to the enemies who act first. So in this case, it will be the knight. So we know the knight has a action. There's only one action in the moment because he has not leveled up yet. So his only action is the longsword, so the basic attack. Target one creature 1 or 2 space away, make a physical attack versus their defense. So in this case, it will just try to attack the Venom. So the Venom Spider has a defense of 2. The knight has a +1, so let's look at that. So 2 + 1 is 3 versus 2, so the spider will take 1 damage. Now on top of that, we will have to also roll the bullshit of our characters. Now I haven't actually put down the qualities and the flaws for my characters specifically, because I do want to show you what options we have. So this is the possibilities for my knight. So there's 6 possible qualities. You basically roll a d6 to see which qualities you get and put it to your 6. And then you roll one of your flaws and put it to the bullshit 1 area. So you can basically say that is your bullshit. And then we will just see what it is. So let's roll it together. So the qualities for this knight is 1. So a shield wall. So whenever I roll a 6, I will get a shield walls. So in this case, let me just put it down over here. So again, I am actually trying to get this in the same way as the condition tab. So I'm going to probably laminate and create little tokens in the same sheet, and actually, we can stick it there so I don't have to write anything down. But let's roll for the flaws as well. So the flaws was also a 1. So in this case, I'm like a turtle on its back in this damn thing. You gain the condition stunned. So basically, if I roll a 1 in my bullshit die, I will get stunned. So let's see what I get if I get anything. And I get a 5. So no actions or no bullshit in this case. And that goes to the next character, which is the one next in hand, because doctors and the wizard swap space. So it will be the wizard's turn. So the wizards only have 1 attack, so which is the sling, a basic attack, and target 1 creature 3 or 4 space away. Make a physical attack roll versus their defense. This is where the space is important, because 3 spaces ahead is 3 or 4 spaces ahead is 1, 2, 3 or 4. So the wizard can only target the giant rat or the venom spider in this case. While if it didn't swap place with the doctor, then it would actually be able to target the venom and the rat. And this is where I find this is such a great way of representing the video game mechanics in an analog style. It captures that, you just try to do something, but because of roles that is outside of your control, you just can't target the venom bat, the venom spider, which is being hurt by the knight. So you can only target the 2 targets you probably don't want to target at this point, because you want to kill the venom spiders before it can move. But either way, let's say if we do roll it for it. So let's say we're gonna roll for the giant bat because it has a less defense. It says 1, while the venom spider has 2. So we'll just roll a physical attack, a 6 minus 2 versus the 1. So it's actually 3 exactly. So we can actually still the slingshot works. So we hit the giant rat and it goes away. So the wizard actually managed to kill the rat straight away. And then we will need to roll for his bullshit and then go on to the doctor. So I think you get an idea of how this game works. And this game is really nice in terms of capturing the Darkest Dungeon video game gameplay, moment to moment excitement, where you try to see if you can actually do the action you want, if you can actually kill the target you want, rather than like any other like 4 Against Darkness or D100 dungeons, the likes of those, where it's more about rolling back and forth. There is no real tactics. If you want tactics, you probably need to go to the likes of, Warhammer, where you actually have a player board while, measuring how far you are with the different models. But this way, it is just simplified into one single line of marching order. And I think that is the best innovation from the Darkest video games. And this is also the best adaptation back into the tabletop analog world. That said, as I mentioned earlier, this game does require tracking. And the way that I'm showing here is already my version of a simplified character sheet. The original character sheet is A4 size, so you need 4 of them, so it won't even fit into my table. So one of the best things of this game is to simplify the strategic map requirement, but at the same time, the character sheet is way too big. And then there's also way too much writing to keep track of everything. So you need to keep track of, characters' cooldown or, their bullshit, whatever conditions they have. And as I've mentioned, I've simplified it using my little way of pulling a blue tack on each of these kind of like token, and then you can stick it on your character sheet, and it does help a lot for me, but it is still not the best ideal way of playing. And that is where I think the new edition comes into place. So earlier I've spoke about the neck deep version. So the new edition actually will contain 3 books. This is one of it. This is containing the random dungeon generations, for those of you who want this. And speaking of which, you don't actually need to draw dungeons. I know some people hate drawing grids and stuff. You can actually simplify it like I did as well. So in the original game, I just basically say this paragraph H is this one, and it leads to a room that looks like this shape. So it's ADXLFB. And then I just say, if I encounter it, I will circle it, and then I will write down what I've encountered. So you don't actually need a proper grid paper, which I also don't, personally like to do, because it just takes so much time to draw. But back to this game. So apart from this one, there should be 2 more books that I don't have access to. One of it is the new edition. So there's a coin, and so this is the Mud and Blood edition, where it comes with 2 books, but I think the new ones will be called the Gallows, where there's new story campaign. So apart from the existing adventures in this book, there should be additional ones. But also, I think the core rule books will be revamped so that includes more information, and then also there should be new battle board markers, player reference sheets, as well as I think potentially other tokens and standees and dice, which is not included in this box for some reason. I know most people have D6 dice. So if you are interested, and I do think this is a great game, this is especially great when you want more meat in your dungeon crawl combats, because this is kind of the most interesting part for me, is to look at tactical position, tracking your cooldown, if you can actually do the action you want to do at that turn. And if you failed, obviously, it means that you completely screwed up the whole sequence and you just want to beat yourself, which is also the part of fun. But you don't have to do what I did over here, as to recreate my own character sheet, or even, I think, status tokens, which, you can if you want to. But, if you just want the whole experience prepared for you, I think the new edition is the way to go. So I'm happy for people who can get access to that for the first time, unlike myself or a lot of people who have to come up with ways or accept the form factor as the first edition as is. So I think that is a quite quick overview of the marching order, and I will talk to you guys next time. Thank you. Bye bye.